In the decade of the 1910s, Hadassah is founded in March of 1912 by Henrietta Zold. She believes that everyone should have access to good medical care and sends nurses to Palestine to provide it. In the decade of the 1920s, Hadassah Hospital opens in Haifa. A special village is adopted to care for war orphans and socially disadvantaged children. Hadassah forms its continuing partnership with JNF. In the decade of the 1930s, Youth Aliyah begins to rescue Jewish children from Germany and brings them to Palestine. A university hospital and nurses training school are built. Hadassah sends emergency war shipments of medical supplies, equipment, food, drugs, and clothing to Palestine. In the decade of the 1940s, Hadassah charters its first chapter in Tampa. Hadassah becomes co-sponsor of Young Judea, the Zionist youth movement, and establishes a trade school for girls. Hadassah Hebrew University School of Medicine opens in 1949. Unfortunately, Hadassah's founder, Henrietta Zold, dies in 1945 before she could see the establishment of the modern State of Israel. When a convoy of doctors and nurses are sent to maintain our Mount Scopus Hospital, they are brutally attacked, and Hadassah is forced to abandon the hospital behind Jordanian lines in a divided Jerusalem. In the decade of the 1950s, Hadassah sponsors Young Judea's first summer course program and first-year course in Israel. Our School of Dental Medicine opens. In the 1960s, the decade begins with the opening of Hadassah Hospital at Ain Karam and closes with the return to us of Hadassah's Mount Scopus Hospital after the Six-Day War. Hadassah unveils the beautiful Chagall windows at the Abel Synagogue at Ain Karam and celebrates its Golden Jubilee year. Men are welcomed as Hadassah associates, and our youth movement continues to grow, including camps around the U.S. In the decade of the 1970s, Hadassah establishes a youth center on Mount Scopus for young Judeans. Hadassah College continues to grow in Jerusalem. Hadassah Medical Organization treats more than 4,000 casualties of the Yom Kippur War. Hadassah helps Jews immigrate from the Soviet Union to Israel, while our members march for Soviet Jewry in the U.S. The rebuilt Mount Scopus Hospital is opened. Hadassah welcomes its 100,000th life member and holds its first national convention outside the U.S., bringing 2,500 participants to Israel. In the decade of the 1980s, Hadassah rescues famine-stricken Ethiopian Jews and brings them to live in Israel. Youth Aliyah cares for arriving Ethiopian youngsters. The first test tube baby is born at Hadassah Hospital. Hadassah International reaches more than 30 countries. Hadassah marches with 300,000 women in a Washington pro-choice rally. In the decade of the 1990s, Hadassah welcomes the wave of Jews from the dissolving Soviet Union. Hadassah sends eye surgeons to Kenya, medical equipment and supplies to Kosovo, and plants trees with JNF. The Nurses Council brings war relief to Bosnia. Hadassah Brandeis Institute is formed. After the millennium, in the decade of the 2000s, Hadassah's Young Judea participants in Birthright Israel programs, bringing Jewish kids to discover Israel. Hadassah is approved as a United Nations non-governmental organization. At Ain Karam, a new center for emergency medicine and an embryonic stem cell research center are opened. Called a bridge to peace for its policy of welcoming all people to its hospitals, Hadassah is nominated for the 2005 Nobel Peace Prize. Young Judeans volunteer for victims of Hurricane Katrina. Hadassah uses embryonic stem cells in research on MS. In the current decade of the 2010s, Hadassah doctors are among the first responders in the wake of the earthquake in Haiti, setting up the first mobile surgical hospital. Besides performing countless life-saving surgeries, they delivered over 1,000 babies. The Sarah Wetzman Davidson Hospital Tower is built and dedicated, a 19-story green, state-of-the-art hospital building, Hadassah's centennial gift to the State of Israel. Plans to renovate the older building at Ein Karim will be finalized. Nationally, Hadassah's membership will rise from 330,000 to 350,000. Tampa Amit Hadassah's membership rises to 633 plus 75 associates.
I stand in front of the grave of Henrietta Zold, who founded Hadassah almost 100 years ago on Purim 1912. We have walked in her footsteps. Her legacy is ours, and we now continue as we set our eyes, as she did, to the future. I set forth with this torch to bring to every city and town of America and Puerto Rico and all of the countries of Europe and South America and throughout Israel, to light the torch of Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization of America. Come on then, you builders of the future, carry us on the road to Zion as we set forth to the next century and the eternity of Hadassah and the Jewish people.